When it comes to Mentor Roulette, a common cause for arguments and disagreements is in regards to extreme duties. Whether it is some mentors being frustrated by their presence at all in the roulette, non-mentors being frustrated that the mentors are frustrated by it, or the simple fact that there are players actually queuing for these duties in the first place. About 2 years ago, I took a stab at this specific topic from a more general onlooker's point of view. But now, with over 1,000 successful Mentor Roulettes, I have a lot more insight into this topic than I feel like I did before. Especially considering about 1/10 of my successful Mentor Roulettes were extreme trials. So let's talk about that. Let's start with a very quick overview of what the Mentor Roulette actually is. When you become a combat mentor, which among other things requires 1,500 commendations, a new daily duty roulette appears in your roulette overview, called Mentor Roulette. However, to access it, you need to complete all dungeons in the game, all trials in the game, all normal raids in the game, not coils, all alliance raids in the game, all guild tests in the game, as well as all extreme trials in the game except for the ones from the current expansion. This even includes the 2 super random trials from the A Realm Reborn Relic Weapon questline. Once all of it has been completed, synced or not, the Mentor Roulette unlocks. Now, the reward from the Mentor Roulette Daily is so pathetically small that it is about half or less than the daily reward from almost any other roulette. So that's obviously not why you do it. Some players of course do it just for the fun of it. However, aside from them, successfully clearing a duty in the context of Mentor Roulette progresses the achievement series I Hope Mentor Will Notice Me, which finishes at 2,000 duties. Any duty completed in Mentor Roulette contributes equally much to this achievement, whether it is a 30-second trip to Under the Armor or a hard-fought extreme that took the full 60 minutes to beat. Ultimately, as far as the mentor is concerned, the reward is the same offered by the game. Some of you might already see a problem here if you didn't know beforehand. Now, a lot of players believe that the purpose of the Mentor Roulette is to swoop in and help Sprouts to learn and clear content, but this is actually not the case. It is possible that the Mentor Roulette prioritizes first-timer duties, but I do not believe we have any unbiased, convincing evidence to suggest that it does. As the Smith explains when you ask about the Mentor Roulette, the purpose of this roulette is quite literally just to fill groups. Any duty on the list that is having trouble filling is on the menu, whether it is a first-timer or someone doing their daily expert roulette, or in fact, a light party's worth of players trying to queue Nidhogg Extreme. This also means that mentors may find themselves more frequently landing in duties that people generally don't queue for, and will more frequently be replacements in things like alliance raids due to the frequency at which people leave those. Things like that. Due to this surprisingly erroneous assumption that the Mentor Roulette is meant to help the Sprouts, I know how it sounds. A surprising amount of players expect the mentors that queue for Mentor Roulettes to effectively be superhero gamers that just so happen to know every duty in that roulette front to back, and if you are not this prepared, then you're underprepared. Which of course is a rather strange view once we realize that the roulette is effectively just meant to fill groups, despite the misleading name. And the only incentive to clear the duty is that there is no reward at the end if you don't. Some players even suggest that for the unlocking of Mentor Roulette, a clear of a duty should only count if it was done synced, because surely then, only mentors that know the fights would have access to Mentor Roulette, so they won't be a burden should they choose not to leave at the side of an extreme in the first place. But while that perspective is somewhat noble in a way, having actually cleared close to 100 extreme trials in Mentor Roulette, I at least have some perspective as to why that seems both rather extreme of a requirement, while simultaneously unnecessary, and also wouldn't properly prepare someone for what they will meet in Mentor Roulette after all. Out of my over 1,000 Mentor Roulettes, I have seen every extreme in A Realm Reborn, every extreme in Heavensward, as well as Susano and Rathalos extreme. That one in particular is quite popular. I wonder why. And have managed to successfully clear every single one, at least once. And especially for the Heavensward extremes, have been in groups that tried and failed, as well as groups that didn't try before they fell apart. Based on this, probably unsurprisingly, demanding that people queuing Mentor Roulette have a synced clear of every extreme past Heavensward already seems like overkill. Not to mention, let's say you cleared a Shadowbringers extreme synced exactly once just to unlock Mentor Roulette, and then didn't see the duty for 2 years. While you might have a vague memory of some of the mechanics you would need to keep track of, you would probably not be significantly better equipped than someone who reads up on the fight when they happen to land in there in Mentor Roulette anyway. While sure, having the hands-on experience with these extremes from doing them synced multiple times definitely puts you in a better position than if you had not done so. This is an amount of practice that simply is not happening with just one synced clear, and as mentioned, the probability that you genuinely would land in any of these high-level extremes is abysmally low. And based on my own personal experience, not only would you need to land in the duty, but you would also need to land there with a party of players where no one leaves. But even if all that happens to align, you did your homework, you practiced the duties synced in advance, you landed in the extreme, and shockingly, everyone stays, even through wipes. This is actually exactly what introduces the real quote-unquote problem with Mentor Roulette. Who is it that queues for this kind of content in the first place? And by this kind of content, I mean that extreme duty you landed in. As previously mentioned, whenever you enter Mentor Roulette, the length of the duty could be anything from 30 seconds of guild test to a full hour of extreme trial to, although unlikely, 2 hours of alliance raid. The reason why this is a quote-unquote problem is that the reward is the same, meaning the only factors that matter, aside, of course, from having fun, what? Fun in my video game? Is how quickly you can get duty clears. Now, most extremes, especially the A Realm Reborn and Heavensward ones, can be completed in under 10 minutes if everyone knows what to do, which actually makes them faster than your average dungeon, and sometimes as fast, if not faster, than many regular trials and raids. But it really comes back to who is queuing for these extremes. The probability that someone looked up a guide on how to do an extreme, not to mention looked deeper into how their own job works optimally before queuing for an extreme, is low, as if you did look up a guide, you're probably more connected with the wider community of Final Fantasy XIV, which would mean that you're far more likely to know that the recommended way to approach extreme trials like this is to either A. not Lamau, or B. through Party Finder. Which means that most of the players that a mentor would be paired up with in an extreme trial through Mentor Roulette would be queuing because they don't know that, or because they are on the free trial and so concluded they had no other option, or for the memes, Lamau, which is probably how you would land in a Shadowbringers extreme. Which means, long story short, that while you, the mentor, might have done your homework and roughly remember how to beat this fight from practice, you have to assume that somewhere between 1 and 7 players in your party have no idea how to do this fight, and may have queued in assuming they could figure it out on the fly while they're here. And while some of those players absolutely have the chops to figure out Ramuh Extreme in a few pulls with few directions needed, a large portion of them also just don't. Which means that while you might have practiced the particular extreme trial in a party where everyone did their homework and know exactly what to do, when it comes to Mentor Roulette, there's a very real chance that your tanks don't know how to tank swap, or how to use defensive cooldowns. Your healers might be spamming Cure 1 or Medica until they are out of MP, and your DPS might be Ice Mages or otherwise significantly underperforming. And having practiced the fight in your own time might not equip you to actually handle that, whether playing around the chaos of these players or knowing how to teach them the important mechanics to watch out for. I'd say the most effective way to learn these things, genuinely, is by having it happen in Mentor Roulette itself. Now, there are plenty of players that are totally willing to help fill some duties when needed. Plenty of players willing to jump into the chaos that is Mentor Roulette. A reasonable amount of them are even perfectly capable and willing to carry their own weight should they land in an extreme duty. However, a smaller quantity of Mentor Rouletteers have the chops, or perhaps even the patience, to teach the rest of the party how to do a duty, should it come to that. And this is where the problems truly arise. As far as the queuing mentor is concerned, the reward is the same across all the duties Mentor Roulette can send you to. The fact you could land in a guild hest and get your reward in 30 seconds, or you could land in an extreme and, while you might succeed within an hour, if you don't, you have now invested an hour of your time and don't get a reward at all. Meanwhile, the one that helped with Under the Armor did get rewarded. Now, if you instead just leave the extreme trial immediately as the first person, you are locked out of queuing again for 30 minutes. But if you have zero confidence the party you landed in the duty with are going to complete the duty within 30 minutes, then you're just as well off as if you had stayed. Assuming we're entirely focused on efficiency. Granted, if you are the second to leave, or wait until the duty can and successfully is abandoned, you leave with zero repercussions, but that does require you to stay for longer. Imagine, for a moment, if any of the other daily roulettes had this property where the reward is exactly the same, but the duty length varied by several magnitudes, not to mention leaving in a real chance that you don't get any reward at all. Granted, technically this one is always in the cards, but the probability that you outright time out and fail a duty in any of the other roulettes is ludicrously slim. The way to balance this system to justify players not just leaving on sight is to either make sure all of the duties in the batch are somewhat equal in difficulty and length, or by adjusting the reward according to the expected effort and time investment. But because Mentor Roulettes are entirely on a clear or no clear system due to the achievement, there simply is no tuning knob to help alleviate this imbalance. One way to better incentivize players to stay when they're presented with a harder duty in this way would be to count a harder duty like an extreme as more clears when you do clear it. But once we start talking about this, how many is fair then? If you were lucky enough, quote unquote, you would be able to do like 30 under the armor runs in the time it takes a random party to clear, for instance Ramu Extreme, just once. But at the same time, some Ramu Extreme runs, or any other Extreme for that matter, are cleared in 5 minutes. So how do you balance that? Perhaps the existing system of simply letting those that don't wanna do it leave and take the L is the best we can get. What do you think? Now, if you have seen any of my Mentor Roulette series, you will know that I pretty much never leave unless there is no way to get the party going in the first place. So, if that is the way you want to approach Mentor Roulettes, but you might be afraid of failing due to lacking the experience, here's my advice. You don't need to already know how all the extremes work before queuing into Mentor Roulette. Not only are there 38 extremes in the roulette, over half of them pretty much never happen anyway, and only about a fifth of them come up pretty regularly, relatively speaking. What I do recommend that you do is mentally prepare yourself to try your best, regardless of what duty you get. When you land in an extreme you don't have experience with, mention it. Ask if anyone else knows what to do, and maybe if they can let you in on what you need to watch out for. At that point, you will either get the information you need or learn that no one else can explain it for you or your party. If this happens, this is your cue to look up the fight and see if you can figure out the important parts. At first, this will be very hard, but as you do this more, you will get better at recognizing what things are just "and then the boss does a raid ride," and what things actually require attention. If this fails, or if someone pulls early, keep your peepers wide open and try your best to figure out what the mechanics are. This will be immensely helpful for improving your overall skill as well. And once you know what to do, you can always explain it for your party. Sometimes it will take a few clears before you actually retain the information, and so the extremes you see more frequently will stick more easily. On top of that, you will also get better acquainted with what things the other party members tend to need help with understanding. Another tip is to queue as a job you feel confident playing at any level, since you could get a level 50 extreme or a level 80 dungeon, or something completely different. And my last tip is that all of the A Realm Reborn extremes can be beaten with just 4 players synced. So as long as about half of your party is trying their best and includes the necessary rolls, it may still be winnable with the other half contributing basically nothing. And, as always, the worst that can happen is that you don't succeed. So, if you're having fun, you can't actually lose. Have fun! Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact: despite the fact that I actively go out of my way to queue at times of the day and week where I feel more confident that extremes are more likely to occur, around 12% of my Mentor Roulettes are extremes. In contrast, guild hests are around 31%, regular trials are around 9%, and normal raids are around 14%. Based on my observations, extreme trials are more likely to take place in the evenings of the particular region, so you might be able to avoid them, if you want to, by queuing at other times of the day.